Hello everyone and welcome back to Destiny. I want to start things off here by saying that I've seen a lot of the feedback online about the Hunter, and in this video I want to prove how it's possible that the Hunter might actually be viable in a raid encounter. And while we still don't have the full picture of what tools might be available to us in our subclasses, we can actually gain a lot of knowledge of what's possible with both the Gunslinger and the Arcstrider by taking a closer look at these subclass perks. So let's jump in and break down the Destiny 2 Hunter. So let's go ahead and start talking about the Gunslinger. We start with the Super Golden Gun, which generates a flaming pistol that can do massive damage to enemies. And in the Crucible, this can one-shot your opponents. There are some really key things to keep in mind with Golden Gun, which are actually going to apply with the different ability focuses, which we'll go over in a minute. But as far as the class ability, we have the Marksman Dodge and the Gambler's Dodge. We were already familiar with these abilities, but now it's our chance to really play around with them. Moving on, we have the same grenades we've had in Destiny 1, nothing new here. The popular choice is still the Trip Mine Grenade. I find it to be simply the most effective in most situations. The jump selections are also the same, and my favorite is Triple Jump. I don't really have much of a reason to go away from that. But of course, the real topic of conversation is with these subclass focuses. Right now, during the beta, we have access to Way of the Outlaw. Let's go ahead and start breaking it down, starting with the melee ability. This one is called Explosive Knife, and you throw a knife from a distance that explodes shortly after impact, focusing on giving you as much damage possible with a single knife. Then we have Change of Woe, which grants you increased reload speed on precision kills, and this does stack 3 times, so you can end up with pretty fast reload speeds. Next we have Deadshot, which significantly improves your ability to hit with Golden Gun. So basically this just turns up the auto aim on Golden Gun, making it a little bit more effective if you need to fire it from the hip, which you might need to do considering the next perk, 6 Shooter. Golden Gun can be fired quickly up to 6 times, but has a shorter duration. Sadly, we're sort of locked into this ability. We don't have a way of currently deactivating it, so this is the only way we can experience Golden Gun. We see a little switch here, which I haven't seen in earlier builds of the game, which might be a quick way to switch to the other subclass focus, which it turns out is called Way of the Sharpshooter. Let's start with the melee modifier. Precision Knife kills with this melee ability immediately recharge it. This is the same as it was in Destiny 1. As you'll see, and as the name implies, this focus is all about precision accuracy, when the Way of the Outlaw is more about delivering as much damage output as possible. We move on to the next ability, which is Practice Makes Perfect. This used to be called Gunslinger's Trance, and I can guess they wanted to change it to avoid confusion, which makes sense. This basically enters you into a trance with each precision hit, reducing the cooldown of your super. That means that every time you get a precision hit, you reduce the cooldown of your super, gaining you Golden Gun that much faster. Next up we have Crowd Pleaser, which is the first super modifier for Golden Gun, which grants you precision damage with the super. Now, there is a lot of confusion about this around the community, so I want to clarify it right here, right now, that precision damage is only turned on with this ability in this focus. As you'll notice in this footage, I'm shooting this Ultra right in the head, and there is no precision damage. Now, in addition to enabling precision damage, it actually also generates orbs of light whenever you get precision hits, not kills. So this might imply that Gunslinger's viability in things like raid encounters might actually be a bit more increased. Now, of course, we're going to have to wait and see exactly how many orbs of light are generated. There's a lot of unanswered questions here, but it's nice to see that this was added in. Also, with precision damage, you can actually exceed the amount of damage that's possible with 6 Shooter. So again, this one seems to be a lot more viable for PvE encounters. And not only does it enable precision damage, but it also generates orbs of light for just getting precision hits. Again, fantastic for facing something like a raid boss with a huge crit spot. And finally, we have a very welcome super perk called Line 'em Up. Precision hits with Golden Gun increase damage and extend its duration. Again, rewarding precision hits with Golden Gun, increasing the damage one after another. So again, to summarize, we have Way of the Outlaw, which is all about DPS output, And then we have Way of the Sharpshooter, which is all about precision hits and getting more use out of Golden Gun. And trust me, a lot of you might be thinking you're making excuses for Bungie. The Hunter is still not a viable option for raiding. While that might be partially true, I'm trying my best to find the good out of what we have. We kind of have to deal with it. Yes, Bungie is going to take our feedback and hopefully make some adjustments, but for the most part, this is what we have, so we have to learn how to harness it properly. I already know that I'm going to be starting with a Hunter for my first playthrough, so I want to be able to fully understand all of my abilities so I can prove myself in the raid. And speaking of raid, you might just become one of the most valuable parts on your fire team if you use Arcstrider properly. I know if the situation presents itself during the raid, I'm going to volunteer myself for ad duty because of what you're about to watch. I had the feeling in my gut, and I know I've said it in probably every video I've posted up until this point, but Arcstrider is genuinely my favorite subclass so far. And of course that starts with Arcstaff, one of my favorite supers I've ever witnessed in Destiny. Second to probably only Shadow Shot. If you need to clear the room, this is what you use. If you played a lot with Blade Dancer in Destiny 1, you're gonna have to sort of unlearn everything you learned with that subclass. In Destiny 1, you could use Blade Dances to sort of close distances by attacking with R1, but in this case, you actually want to rely on your running and also dodging around obstacles. So again, for the Arcstrider, we have the choice between two of the subclass focuses. In the beta, we only have access to Way of the Warrior, and let's start with the melee override called Combination Blow. Getting a kill with a melee ability triggers health regeneration and increases your melee damage temporarily. As you'll notice, this is the first of many melee perks that are possible with Arcstrider, with my personal favorite being Combat Flow. Melee kills recharge your dodge ability, and if you remember from your dodge ability, Gambler's Dodge grants you a full charge on your melee ability when you're dodging near an enemy. So basically, you can go infinitely back and forth between dodging and meleeing as long as you have an enemy to kill. And honestly, this is probably one of the most fun things to do in the game.
Giving me a headache.
It's sort of addicting, you can't help but not do it once you really get in the flow. And on top of that, this is perfectly complemented by Deadly Flow. You can see here that I'm pretty far away from the second Scion that I punch, and he leaps forward to make contact. So again, it can be very effective, and if the enemies are just a little bit more powerful than can be killed by a single punch, I basically sort of spray in front of me with an auto rifle just to get them a little bit damaged, and then I go in for those awesome kills. Aside from that, we have Way of the Wind. Again, we have a little switch here, which will most likely be used to switch over to it. Starting with the melee override, we have Disorienting Blow, which will disorient the target and nearby enemies. Next, we have Focused Breathing, which sprinting recharges your dodge ability, increased maximum sprint speed. So not as effective as Combat Flow, but it keeps you generally safer. The next perk is Combat Meditation, which while critically wounded, melee and grenades recharge drastically faster, introducing some of that high risk, high reward to Way of the Wind. And then finally we have Lightning Reflexes. You are harder to kill while dodging. So while this isn't necessarily a perk for your super, that is most likely when you will notice it most, especially in the Crucible, because you have infinite dodge while using Arcstaff. You can dodge around your enemies with increased armor, close the distance a lot more effectively, and then take them out. So again, this focus definitely seems very interesting, but of course Bungie likes to say things like drastically increased, which isn't really a definitive value, so we're going to have to wait until we have access to this subclass to really test it out. I've been playing with Way of the Warrior all week, and I'm in love with it. So after gaining a little bit more knowledge about the Hunter's subclass perks, are they more viable for raid encounters? Well, I honestly think the answer is yes. The absence of Night Stalker, as far as we know, does not mean that Gunslinger and Arcstrider are completely useless in the raid. These perk builds are very devastating if used properly, and I can't wait to test them out in more hardcore PvE encounters in the final game. While yes, the dodge ability is a bit selfish, it still helps you stay alive in most instances and can increase your DPS pretty drastically. And so if during the raid we ever hit a DPS check encounter, you're gonna be happy you're gonna have at least one Hunter on the team. Whether it's clearing ads with Arcstrider or granting Chains of Woe, which increases reload speed for the entire team, I think Hunters have a chance to really prove themselves. Now for the comments of this video when sharing your thoughts on the Hunter, instead of defaulting to sort of the negative, we've really been seeing that all week on Twitter and Reddit. I want you to find a positive thing for you to say in regards to Hunters and endgame PvE. So anyways, drop a like if you've enjoyed my overview of the Hunter in Destiny 2. We're going to be going over the Titan and the Warlock in future videos, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I will see you all next time.